showed up for Christmas, but Mom said, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong house." Shocked, I left. It was snowing hard the day I lost my mother. I'd driven 5 hours in that thick, silvery fog of Christmas Eve, windshield wipers clicking like a metronome over memories I didn't realize were still alive. A thermos of coffee sat cooling in the cup holder, and in the back seat, 3 neatly wrapped gifts. One for my niece, one for my nephew, and one for Mom. A delicate scarf I picked out 2 months ago. Forest green, her favorite. I'd even brought her cinnamon candles, the ones she always burned around the holidays. I remembered that smell like it lived in my bones. When I pulled into the driveway of the old house, my childhood home, the windows were lit up warm. Golden. I saw silhouettes moving in the kitchen. Laughter spilled into the cold through cracks in the windows. And for the first time in years, I thought, maybe things will be different this year. I parked and grabbed the gifts, tucked them under one arm, straightened my coat, and walked up the steps. I rang the bell. A pause, then the sound of feet on hardwood. I smiled. My heart ached with hope. The door opened, and there she was, my mother. Only, she didn't smile. She didn't light up. She didn't call my name. She looked at me, looked right through me, and said flatly, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong house." The words hit harder than the wind. I stood there frozen. "Mom, it's me, Emily." She blinked once, tilted her head. "I'm afraid I don't know you." Then she shut the door. I stood there on the porch, holding those stupid presents, with snow piling on my boots and the sound of "Oh Holy Night" echoing from inside. I didn't knock again. I didn't say a word. I just walked back to my car, somewhere between backing out of the driveway and merging onto the freeway. The tears came. I had no idea what had just happened, or why. It was like I'd stepped into some parallel world, one where I no longer existed. I called her once, straight to voicemail. I texted my brother, no reply. And so, I drove back to Boston, alone, trying to find answers in a silence that offered none. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not at work, not my friends. I buried it under routine, IVs, patient charts, warm smiles for sick kids whose parents sat worried at their bedsides. It was easier to give love to strangers than wonder why the people I loved had turned their backs. For 2 weeks, I said nothing, until one night in early January, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Mrs. Dwyer, our old neighbor. "Emily," she said, her voice cracking, "I heard what your mom said to you on Christmas. I just wanted you to know, you didn't deserve that." That one sentence unraveled everything I thought I knew. I hadn't heard Mrs. Dwyer's voice in over a decade. She used to slip me homemade brownies after school and hum hymns while gardening. Her voice was like a thread to something solid in a world that had come unstitched. "I saw you on the porch," she said, barely above a whisper. "I saw the way your mother looked at you. And I saw the way you walked away." I didn't know what to say. My throat was tight. She paused. "Emily," she told everyone, "you didn't want to be part of the family anymore. That you cut ties. That you were bitter." I stood in my kitchen, heart pounding like a war drum. Her words pressing into old wounds I didn't even know were still open. "She told people I left? She said you made it clear years ago that you wanted nothing to do with them." She hesitated. "That's not true, is it?" It wasn't just a question. It was an accusation against the silence I had kept for too long. "No," I said. "That's not true. I never said that. I always came home for Christmas. I tried." My voice broke. Mrs. Dwyer sighed heavily. "I thought so. I knew something didn't sit right." I sat down at the edge of my bed. That old familiar ache in my chest. The ache of being misunderstood. Unheard. Erased. She didn't stop there. "Emily, sweetie, I shouldn't be saying this. But I think you deserve to know. Your brother, Ryan, he told your mom you were the one who told his wife about the affair." My blood ran cold. "What? Back in July, remember? That mess they went through. Ryan's wife found out he was seeing someone from work. There was a big blowout. Ryan said you told her." "I didn't even know," I whispered. And it was true. I hadn't heard a word of it until just now. I figured, I told your mother it didn't sound like something you'd do. But, well, you know how she is about Ryan. Always has been. I did know. Ryan could do no wrong. Honor student, law degree, married with kids. And me? The soft-spoken nurse with no husband. No kids. Just long shifts and worn-out scrubs. I wasn't the disappointment. Exactly. I was invisible. Like a family pet someone forgot to feed. I don't know why he would blame me. I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew. Because lies are easy when they protect the golden image. Because he needed a scapegoat. And I'd been playing that role since we were kids. Mrs. Dwyer's voice cracked again. I just wanted you to hear it from someone. After I hung up, I sat there in the stillness. The past folding in on itself. I thought about the Christmas when I was 10. And Ryan had broken Mom's antique angel figurine. I'd taken the blame. And she'd grounded me for a week. Ryan never said a word. Or the Thanksgiving I brought home a boyfriend, my first real one. And Ryan made sure to whisper lies to Mom about him stealing from her purse. I'd cried in the bathroom while the turkey went cold. I thought we'd outgrown all that. Apparently not. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept hearing her voice, my mother's voice, so cold. So final. I think you have the wrong house. There was a knock at my door the next morning. I didn't expect anyone, especially not her. It was Ava, my niece, Ryan's daughter. She looked older than I remembered, 16 now. Maybe 17. Same chestnut hair, same cautious eyes. I hope it's okay, she said, hugging her coat tighter. I found your address online. I let her in, made her cocoa. She stared at her mug. I didn't believe them. What Dad said, what Grandma said about you. I didn't know what to say. Grandma's different now, she said quietly. Cold, mean, sometimes. Ever since Grandpa died, she's just gotten harder. She picks one person to love and ignores the rest. I felt the sting of recognition. She looked up at me. You didn't tell Mom about Dad's affair, did you? No, I said. I didn't even know about it. She nodded, as if she'd already guessed. I believe you. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something warm. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. There's a New Year's party. At Grandma's. She said you weren't invited. But I think you should come. I stared at the envelope. My hands trembled. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reconciliation. But it was a crack in the wall. Ava bit her lip. I think it's time they heard your side of the story. I didn't touch the envelope for hours after Ava left. It just sat on the kitchen table. Unopened. Like it might bite me if I got too close. A part of me wanted to throw it away. Bury the whole thing along with every version of me that ever wanted back in. But another part, the stubborn, aching part, needed to understand how I had become a ghost in my own family story. That night, I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the snow collect along the sill. I held the envelope in my lap, unopened, not because I didn't believe her. I did, but because holding it meant I still had a choice. I thought about all the ways I had tried to earn love in that house. The extra miles I drove. The silent forgiveness I offered. Again and again. The way I clapped the loudest at Ryan's graduation even though my mother barely looked up from her wineglass at mine. I remembered the last Christmas we were all together. 4 years ago, I had made the mistake of bringing up a promotion I'd received. Head pediatric nurse. My mom had blinked, said, well, Ryan just made partner, as if life were some kind of scoreboard and I was losing badly. I opened the envelope. It wasn't an official invitation. Just a folded piece of paper with the time and date scribbled in Ava's handwriting. Her tiny heart drawn at the bottom. New Year's Eve, 6 p.m. Same house. Same porch. Same door. I don't know why I got dressed that night. Maybe I needed to be seen. Maybe I needed to look them all in the eyes and say, without words, you didn't break me. I put on the green scarf I had bought for my mother. The one she never received. I drove with the windows fogging at the corners. My fingers tight on the wheel. It felt like heading into a storm I couldn't see. But one I'd felt my entire life. The neighborhood looked just as I remembered. Perfect driveways. Wreaths on every door. A blow-up Santa waving drunkenly on the Nelsons' lawn. I parked 2 houses down. My heart pounded with each step up the walkway. I half expected the door to be locked. Or slammed in my face again. But it was Ava who opened it this time. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside and let me in. The house was full of voices. Laughter, clinking glasses, music playing low. For a moment, it felt like I had stepped back in time. Except, no one looked up. Not my brother, who stood by the fireplace, telling some story with his hand on a scotch glass. Not my mother, who sat in her favorite armchair like a queen at court, her pearls too tight on her neck. Not even my sister-in-law, who had always smiled too wide and hugged too quickly. I was invisible again, until Ava cleared her throat. Everyone, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Emily's here. The room went silent. My brother was the first to speak. What is this? Who invited her? Ava didn't flinch. I did. My mother stood up slowly. Emily, I thought we made it clear. I cut her off. Quietly. No, Mom. You made something up. I never left this family. You pushed me out. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Ryan scoffed. Here we go. I turned to him. You lied. You told Mom I ruined your marriage. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I didn't even know you were cheating. Ryan, but you needed someone to blame. And I've been your scapegoat since we were kids. No one said a word. I looked at my mother. Her eyes darted between us. Uncertain now. You believed him without asking me. I said, my voice low. You cut me out. You looked me in the face and told me I didn't belong in the house I grew up in. My breath hitched. And still, part of me hoped I'd done something wrong. That maybe if I figured it out, if I apologized enough, you'd let me back in. A long silence followed. Then Ava stepped forward, placed her hand in mine. She deserves better, she said to the room. We all do. No one moved. And I realized they weren't going to. No apologies. No sudden hugs. Just a room full of people more committed to the lie than the truth. So I turned, took one last look, and walked back out the door. The air outside hit harder than I expected. Even through the scarf, my breath came in short clouds. Not from the cold, but from everything I hadn't said. Every word I'd carried for years now released into a room that refused to listen. I walked back to my car without looking over my shoulder. If anyone followed, I wouldn't have known. I didn't want to know. Once inside, I sat with the engine off. The street was quiet, save for the muffled echoes of music drifting through tightly sealed windows. I could almost pretend I had never been there. That I hadn't stood in front of people who were supposed to love me and told the truth like it might save something. But nothing changed. Not really. I stared at the porch where my mother had first told me I had the wrong house. The lights were just as warm. The wreath just as perfect. But it no longer looked like home. It looked like a stage. One I had finally stepped off of. Back in Boston, my apartment felt smaller but safer. The stillness wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. Ava texted me the next morning. You were brave. Thank you. I see everything more clearly now. I stared at her message for a long time. Then I typed back. I hope you never lose your voice. She never responded to that one. But she didn't need to. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from anyone else. No calls from my brother. No carefully worded emails from my mother trying to smooth things over. Just silence. But this time, it didn't hurt the same. It was honest. And sometimes honesty, even when it's cold, is better than pretending. At work, I felt more present. I wasn't carrying the weight of being unloved by the people who were supposed to love me most. The children I cared for didn't know any of this. But somehow, they could feel the difference. I smiled more. I laughed when they told jokes that made no sense. I sat longer beside the scared ones, just holding their tiny hands until sleep took them. One of the older nurses, Janet, handed me a cup of tea during a break. You look lighter, she said. I just nodded. Because I did. I took walks again, started cooking instead of eating over the sink. I read books without checking my phone every few minutes. I even took a weekend trip up to Maine by myself and watched the ocean crash against the rocks for hours. I began remembering things differently. My childhood wasn't all bad. There were moments, small, flickering ones. My dad dancing with me in the living room to Elvis. The way my mother used to hum while brushing my hair. Back before the world demanded we pick roles in the family and stick to them. But I also remembered how many times I was told to lower my voice. How often I was asked to give up space so Ryan could have more. How easily my needs were treated as burdens. Those things were true too. Sometimes I caught myself rehearsing conversations in my head. Imaginary apologies that would never come. I'd picture my mother showing up at my door. Picture her face crumbling as she finally saw the damage. I'd imagine her arms wrapping around me in the way I had needed for so long. But every time, I let the fantasy fade. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. Ava sent me a photo one day. Her standing in front of a school bulletin board. A ribbon pinned to her chest. Debate champion, the banner said. Thought you'd want to see. Her message read. And I did. I smiled like she was mine. In some strange way, she felt more like family than most of the people I'd grown up with. One evening, months later, I was closing up the hospital when a woman came rushing in with her son. He was barely breathing. His lips blue. I dropped everything. We all did. We worked for hours. He lived. When the mother hugged me afterward, sobbing into my shoulder, I thought, this is what love looks like. Raw, desperate, real. And not once did she ask me if I was enough. Not once did she look at me like a stranger. Sometimes, family is just the people who don't flinch when you need them most. The days started blending together after that. Winter gave way to early spring. And the snow on the sidewalks turned to slush. But I kept walking. Every morning before my shift. Every evening after. As if I were slowly unlearning the idea that home had to mean a person. Or a place. Or four walls filled with people who had memorized your flaws and forgotten your soul. I didn't expect much anymore. And maybe that was the strangest freedom. I had stopped checking my phone for messages that never came. I had stopped dreaming about reconciliations. I was no longer hoping for people to change. I was learning how to change myself instead. One Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from the front desk. A visitor had left something for me. It was a book. A worn copy of Little Women. Inside was a note, tucked between the pages. Thought you'd like this. Meg reminds me of you. Not loud, but strong. Ava. That was the first time I cried in weeks. Not because I was sad, but because someone had seen me. Truly seen me. It made me think of a memory I hadn't touched in years. I must have been 8 or 9. Ryan had broken a neighbor's window with a baseball and panicked. He begged me to say I did it. And I did. I stood there, crying in front of the old man who owned the house. Swearing it was my fault. Ryan got a milkshake on the way home. I got grounded. That was the first time I felt what it meant to carry someone else's guilt. And somehow, I kept carrying it, all the way into adulthood. No more. One morning in May, I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the green scarf. I hadn't worn it since that night. I don't even know why I kept it. But I hadn't been able to let it go. I ran my fingers over the soft weave, remembering the way my mother used to pull her coat tight around her neck. Like she was always cold no matter the weather. I decided to send it. I boxed it up, wrote her name on the front, and mailed it to her address without a note. No explanation, no apology. Let her wonder. I didn't do it for closure. I think I did it because I needed to let go of one last thing that belonged to someone who no longer felt like mine. I didn't hear back. Not that I expected to. But a week later, Ava called. She got it, she said. I waited. She didn't say anything, but she touched it like it hurt. I nodded, though Ava couldn't see me. Are you okay? She asked. I'm better, I said. It was the truth. Summer brought more quiet, but it was a different kind. Not hollow anymore. Not the kind that echoes through the ribs like loneliness. More like peace. The kind that lives in the spaces you used to fill with other people's approval. I started taking pottery classes on the weekends. My hands had always known how to heal. Now they learned how to shape. Clay didn't judge. It didn't compare. It just waited to become whatever I wanted it to be. A few months later, I ran into Mrs. Dwyer again. She was out watering her flowers. Wide-brimmed hat and all. Emily, she said, smiling gently, like she'd been expecting me to walk by someday. You look like yourself again. I thanked her. And we talked for a while. About life, the hospital, the classes I'd taken, the books I'd read. Before I left, she reached out and touched my arm. "You did right by yourself," she said. It stayed with me, the way good words do. That night, I wrote Ava a letter. Not a text, a real letter. I told her that she was brave. That she had more clarity at 17 than most people have at 70. I told her that no matter how things went in her house, she always had a place with me. Not just physically, but in her corner. Always. I didn't tell her what to do. I didn't badmouth anyone. I just told her the truth, that being related doesn't make someone family. And being family doesn't give them permission to hurt you forever. I mailed it the next day. Weeks later, I got one back. It was short. "Thank you for not disappearing. Love, Ava." The leaves had just started turning when I saw Ryan again. I hadn't planned it. It was one of those flukes you don't think about until you're standing in the middle of it. Too late to turn around. I was picking up coffee from a bakery near the hospital when I heard my name. "Emily?" I turned, and there he was, in a suit too crisp for the warm day, holding a paper bag that probably cost more than most people's grocery bills. He looked exactly the same. Maybe a little grayer near the temples. But the same expression. That cool, practiced charm he wore like cologne. "I didn't think I'd run into you," he said, like we'd parted on pleasant terms. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, waiting to see if the man who'd tossed me under the bus for his own mistakes had developed a conscience. He cleared his throat. "Look, about everything. Mom's not doing great. Her memory's slipping. The doctors think it might be the early stages of something." Something. He couldn't even say the word. I nodded once. "I'm sorry to hear that." He shifted. "Uncomfortable. She talks about you. Not always clearly. But your name comes up." I wanted to ask what she said. But I didn't. I had learned, finally, that some doors weren't meant to be reopened. Especially ones I'd spent years sealing shut from the inside. Ryan looked down at his coffee. "She never really got over what happened last Christmas." I raised an eyebrow. "What happened? Or what she did?" He looked up sharply. But I didn't flinch. "Not this time. You blamed me," I said, my voice even. "You told her I exposed your affair. You let her think I abandoned the family. And when she looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong, you stood by and let her." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Do you know what it's like," I continued, "to have your own mother pretend she doesn't know you? Not in a fight, not in anger, but with the cold certainty of someone who's rewritten history, and erased you from it." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I took my coffee from the counter, holding it tight in both hands. "You can take care of her, Ryan. That's your place. It always was." He looked like he wanted to argue. But then his shoulders dropped. "I don't know why I did it," he admitted softly. "I guess I panicked." I gave a small nod. "You always did." He looked away. As I turned to leave, he said, "Ava's been spending a lot of time at the library. Said she's thinking about studying psychology. Wants to work with kids." I smiled without turning back. Sounds like someone I used to know. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the conversation. I didn't ask myself if it meant anything had changed. Because it hadn't. But something inside me had settled. Not like closure. More like confirmation. The kind you don't get from apologies or confessions, but from standing your ground long enough to know it was solid all along. The next time I saw Ava, she brought me a bag of cinnamon candles. "I thought your place should smell like the holidays," she said, grinning. I laughed and lit one on the spot. The scent brought back everything and nothing all at once. She sat on my couch, legs tucked under her, flipping through the college brochure she'd brought with her. "Do you think people can change?" she asked suddenly. I thought about it for a moment. "I think people can choose," I said, "and sometimes that leads to change. But it always starts with a choice." She nodded, folding the page in her lap. "Do you think Grandma ever will?" I looked at her carefully. "That's not a choice you have to wait on." She didn't say anything after that. Just leaned against my shoulder. The way she used to when she was little. Before her world got complicated. The candle flickered in the corner. Warm and familiar, but not painful anymore. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to come find me. I was already home. Winter came again. The days grew shorter, and the air turned sharp, laced with the kind of chill that seeps through your coat and settles in your bones. But this time, I welcomed it. There was something clean about the cold. Honest. It didn't pretend to be warm. It didn't hide. I kept working. The hospital stayed busy, as it always did when the flu rolled in and the city slowed down. But I found time for quiet things too. Long walks in the early dark. Spiced tea with a book in my lap. A growing pile of letters from Ava tucked into the drawer beside my bed. We'd built something steady. She and I, no grand declarations. Just little acts of presence. A visit here. A shared meal there. Her voice on the line when the night felt a little too long. Mine when she needed someone to remind her she wasn't invisible. One evening in December, I got a package. No return address. Just my name. Handwritten. Inside was a photograph. It was old. Faded at the corners. I hadn't seen it in years. The 5 of us, Dad, Mom, Ryan, me, and our dog, Murphy, standing in front of the fireplace the Christmas I was 10. My arm in a sling. Ryan grinning like a fool. Mom's eyes on him. I remembered that day. I'd fallen off my bike, trying to keep up with Ryan and his friends. Broke my wrist. Mom was furious, not because I was hurt, but because I'd ruined the family photo plans. Still, we'd taken the picture. Taped to the back was a note. I remember this. I see things differently now. Mom. That was all. No apology. No explanation. But something in me softened. Just a little. I didn't call her. I didn't send anything back. But I kept the photo. I put it in a drawer with Ava's letters and the cards from kids who'd once called me their favorite nurse. It wasn't forgiveness. Not exactly. But it was a kind of peace. That Christmas, Ava came over with a bag of groceries and a playlist of holiday songs she insisted on playing too loud. We cooked dinner together, badly, and danced around the kitchen, laughing when we burned the rolls. After we ate, we sat by the window, watching snow dust the street below. She turned to me, quiet all of a sudden. Do you ever wish it had gone differently? I thought about it. There were parts of me that still carried the shape of what should have been. The hugs I never got. The praise I never heard. The small ways I shrank to make space for others. The ache of wanting to be chosen. Just once. Without condition. But there were also parts of me that had grown strong in the silence. Steady in the absence. Kind in a world that hadn't always been kind back. I used to. I said. All the time. But now, I think what happened gave me the chance to stop begging for love that hurt. To find something better. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You found me. I smiled. I did. The room smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. The lights were low. There was no tree. No stockings. No forced tradition. Just 2 people choosing each other. I didn't need to be part of the picture anymore. Not if it meant disappearing in it. I had my own story now. My own rhythm. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped feeling like I was missing something. Because I wasn't. I had everything I needed. As the snow kept falling, soft and endless, I thought about that front porch. The door that had closed. The voice that had told me I had the wrong house. And I realized, maybe she was right. Because the right house, the right home, is where you are known. Where you are wanted. Where you are enough. Exactly as you are. And this? This was mine.